Welcome to her remarkable history. Remember, to support our channel, please subscribe. The shocking reason Mary Queen of Scots was executed by Elizabeth I. The relationship between Mary Queen of Scots and the Tudor English monarch Elizabeth I has always been studied and considered for centuries. What cannot be disputed, though, is that during Elizabeth's reign she faced a large number of plots and threats to her throne, and many Catholics wanted her dead and replaced with Mary Queen of Scots. The Protestant English monarch was a target for many people, including the Spanish, and she employed a network of spies led by Francis Walsingham to find out intelligence and information of potential plots. Earlier in her reign, she faced the Rudolf Plot, a European plan to get rid of her, and she also faced the Throckmorton Plot, but both of these had the same goal: to replace her with Mary Queen of Scots, and to also bring Catholicism back to England's religion. But there was one plot that was discovered that brought about the death and execution of Mary, and Elizabeth I was forced to sign the death warrant of another anointed queen. But what was the story behind the plot that resulted in the death and execution of Mary Queen of Scots at Fortheringhay Castle? Now, many across England considered Mary Queen of Scots the rightful and legitimate heir to the English throne. These were mostly Catholics, and in 1570 the Pope even issued an order encouraging Catholics to rebel against Elizabeth, and even cause problems inside of England. The Pope encouraged people to kill Elizabeth, and he was enabling people to try to take her off the throne. Mary in this became the main replacement for Elizabeth, but after she had fled Scotland for her safety, she was held in many different prisons around England. Many of these were luxurious castles, and Mary lived in peace, but was still under house arrest. In 1584, the Privy Council agreed a bond of association, which stated that those inside of the line of succession would be barred from the succession and executed if they were involved in treasonous plans to oust the current monarch. Mary agreed to sign this, and an Act of Parliament also said that anyone who benefited from Elizabeth I's death would also be executed if a scheme was discovered. Mary had previously been suspected and implicated in plots, and she virtually signed a document stating that if Elizabeth I was killed, then she too would be executed. Now, Elizabeth's spy master, Francis Walsingham, was worried about Mary and what her supporters could do, and he wrote to Elizabeth I's closest friend, Robert Dudley, that so long as that devilish woman lives, neither Her Majesty must make an account to continue in quiet possession of her crown, nor her faithful servants assure themselves of the safety of their lives. But it would be the Babington Plot that would sign the end for Mary Queen of Scots. The plot was named after Anthony Babington, who was born into a wealthy Catholic family, and his job as a child was as a page boy to the Earl of Shrewsbury's household. Shrewsbury was close to Mary Queen of Scots and was her jailer, whilst the Scottish monarch was imprisoned, and with this Babington attended on her, and he became devoted to her and attached to her. He was a supporter of Mary, and it would later be his plan that tried to get Mary on the English throne. Around 1580, he travelled to Europe and met with other Catholic conspirators who also wanted to get Mary onto the throne. Babington was asked to then smuggle letters to her inside of her prison, and he also then was involved in sheltering Catholic priests. This itself could have resulted in his execution, but he was becoming a prominent member of the Catholic underground. Now in 1586, Mary was then moved to Tutbury, and here the conditions of her imprisonment were tough and hard, and Babington here lost his job as the Scottish Queen's messenger. This made it harder for him to get access to Mary, and smuggle letters was difficult. He was given letters from France to give to her, but he could not pass many of these on. He considered heading to Europe to leave England behind, but then he met a man named Robert Poley, and he gained Poley's trust. Poley, in reality, was a secret agent who managed to infiltrate Babington's network, and he was actually working for Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth I's spy master. Walsingham had many men conduct spy missions to find out information and plots, and during one of these, Gilbert Guildford was interrogated, and he agreed to become a double agent. Guildford then had made contact with the French and arranged letters to be smuggled to Mary, and the plan to do this was to use beer barrels. Inside the wooden barrels, letters would be hidden, but in the March of 1586, inside the plough and in close to the Temple Bar, Babington met with 6 of his friends and debated freeing Mary Queen of Scots from prison. And then they considered killing Elizabeth I and starting a Catholic uprising. Babington hoped that this would be backed up by a foreign invasion, but Guildford found out about this, and he then offered to help Babington make secret ciphered messages, and the pair did this. One of the initial messages was very cryptic, and they used 23 different symbols which were swapped for letters, and a number of symbols stood for common words. A number of false symbols was also used, and Mary was sent a cipher to help with her in decoding the message once she got them. These letters were written by Babington, but were then intercepted by Walsingham. He had counterfeiters make a copy of the letter and then deliver it to Mary sealed and stamped. The letter eventually was cracked, and it suggested that they were planning to kill Elizabeth I. This was the evidence that Walsingham needed to sanction Mary Queen of Scots' arrest, but he decided to let the plan play out slightly without detection. It was believed that if Mary agreed to the plot, then this would be incriminating evidence of treason, and then the whole threat to Elizabeth I could be ended for good. When the code was cracked, any future letter sent between Mary and Babington could easily be understood. Mary did reply, agreeing to be involved in the plot, and she said, "When all is ready, the 6 gentlemen must be set to work, and you will provide that, on their design being accomplished, I may be myself rescued from this place." Walsingham had the Queen of Scotland where he wanted, but he needed conspirators. Mary's note was forged again, and was sent with Babington, and he would implicate the others, falling for the forgery. The first co-conspirator arrested was John Ballard, and he was tortured, and then named a number of other men involved. Anthony Babington was transported to the Tower of London for his involvement, and was tortured further. He was sentenced to death along with other conspirators, and on the 20th of September 1586 they were hanged, drawn and quartered. All of them were tied to hurdles and were dragged behind horses through London, where the crowds jeered at them. They were then executed in front of thousands of people, but justice wasn't entirely served with this for Walsingham. He wanted Mary Queen of Scots also dead, and following the plot, he had her formally arrested and sent to Fortheringhay Castle in Northamptonshire in the October of 1586. She was tried and was refused legal counsel, and was not allowed to review any of the evidence against her. It was clear she was involved in the treasonous plot to kill Elizabeth and overthrow the English Queen, and with this she was sentenced to death. Many consider, though, that she was relieved to be condemned, as she had been held a prisoner for almost 2 decades and must have been desperate to escape and retain some of her freedom. But the Babington Plot was ultimately the conspiracy that resulted in Elizabeth I signing Mary's death warrant. She didn't necessarily want to execute the Scottish cousin, but the Privy Council pressured her into doing this. On the 8th of February 1587, in front of 300 people at Fortheringhay Castle in the Great Hall, an executioner took Mary's head off. This even shocked many around England, and many across Europe were angry. But it was a killing that the Privy Council deemed just, as the threat to Elizabeth was too real with Mary alive. Mary went to her execution with a belief in death that she would be released from the imprisonment she had suffered, and that God would look after her. With this, it's clear to see towards the end of her imprisonment, she would have done almost anything to secure her freedom. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.